Hello, everybody, and welcome to this RTS masterclass with the creators of Adolescence, the smash hit, hugely impactful Netflix miniseries, which has got more people talking than just about any TV series I can remember since back when water coolers in offices were actually a real thing. My name is Eleni Jones. I'm a film and TV journalist and the co-host of Screenshot on BBC Radio 4. And I'm very pleased to be introducing our panel that we have with us, that we're very lucky to have with us today. Let's start with Jack Thorne. Jack would have already secured his place in TV history if he just left it at Skins, but since then he's gone on to create many more landmark TV series, things like National Treasure, This Is England 86, or the other This Is England, many, many more, and of course now Adolescence. Thank you for being here, Jack. Next up, we've got Philip Barantini. Philip Barantini is known for the feature Boiling Point, incredibly tense restaurant drama from 2021. I'm still traumatized from watching it, but it was fantastic. Probably the best restaurant drama ever made, definitely up there with Ratatouille. And since then, Philip has gone on to make other great TV series, Malpractice, the Boiling Point TV series, which is possibly even more successful than the film. And we're very pleased to have you with us, Philip.
Thank you.
I also want to introduce producer Joe Johnson, described as the linchpin of the Adolescence family for keeping everybody on track and together. Joe Johnson's illustrious TV career includes lots of UK TV institutions like EastEnders and Casualty, as well as some very powerful dramas like The Walk-In, written by Jeff Pope, legend, directed by Paul Andrew Williams, another legend. And we're very lucky to have you with us, Joe Johnson. Thank you. And then, of course, Matthew Lewis, director of photography, Mr. One Shot himself. Thank you for being here, Matthew Lewis. I've got lots of very nerdy technical questions to ask you later. You're a long-time collaborator with Philip Barantini and worked on many of the shows that I mentioned earlier. And we're grateful to have you. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Let's start with Jack Thorne, though. Jack, you're a storyteller. So please take us back in time and tell us the story from the very beginning of where the spark for Adolescence began.
I wish I could. I mean, to be honest, the spark came from Phil and Stephen. So I was brought in by Stephen when he phoned me up and he said, I want to make another one-shot drama with Phil Barantini. And I was like, yes, please. And then he said, no, I want it to be about knife crime. And I said, oh, yes, please. So there wasn't really any sort of like I wasn't the ignition system on this show. Yeah. I then got involved and then we had to work out. Stephen had one sort of stipulation, which is that he didn't want to blame the parents. He didn't want to make this a show that was about the parents. And, you know, it wasn't about saying, oh, it was because he had an alcoholic father or because he had an abusive mum or any of those sort of tropes that dramas sometimes go towards when talking about these issues. And so then it was about building as complicated a portrait of Jamie as we could manage and putting lots of different elements into the pot. And that bit I was part of, but the match at the beginning was not me.
All right, so I have to turn to Philip then.
Yes.
What was the spark, and was it? I'm getting the sense, was it always going to be one shot from the very beginning? Did that come even before the idea for the themes and the characters?
It did, yeah. It all sort of started with just a general meeting that I had with Plan B, and they'd seen Boiling Point and loved it, and loved Stephen's performance, and asked would I be interested in doing something else with Stephen in that same format, but maybe in the TV space, because it's not been done in that way before. Obviously, there's been episodes of TV which has been one take and lots of long scenes and stuff, but we didn't think it'd ever been done in that way. So they said, look, if you're interested, go away and come up with an idea and take your time, but me being me, and Matt will tell you this, he's been with me since day one. I don't like, if I've got something in my head, I have to do it immediately. And so I said to Steve, look, we've got this opportunity. And so we just come up with this sort of idea in the back of a car. Stephen had, there'd been a sort of a few incidences of these sort of horrific acts which were committed by young boys stabbing and killing these young girls across the country, and it was very apparent that, you know, we wanted to shine a light on that, and so then we sort of, you know, we pitched that idea to Plan B, and they loved it, and then you know, we said, who are we going to get to write this? And I'd wanted to work with Jack for years, and I said, do you think you'd do it? And Stephen was like, well, I'll ask him. I'll just ring him and ask him. I was like, okay. And then, you know, he did that, and here we are.
Were you an immediate yes, Jack, or did it take some persuading?
No, I was an immediate yes. I'm a very, very cheap date. All it takes is a phone call, it turns out.
Matthew, when you got brought on board and told about this, I mean, you'd obviously worked with Philip before, you'd done one shot before, but was this a kind of even more daunting prospect, or did you feel like you had everything ready to go?
I'm just glad it wasn't a surprise. Like I was told quite early on, I think, while the discussions were being made, sort of that it was going to happen or hopefully happen. So we had a bit of time on my side to cope with the task ahead. It was nice to have already done something like this, obviously, so that there was a foundation to work off of. If I had never done something like this before, I even like the very basics of how you approach it would have been an entire learning curve in itself. So having that really helped. And obviously it was still just immense, the scale of the challenge to do 4 of them. Physically as well as mentally, creatively, technically, all of the leads, including my operator Lee. There you go. Name drop straight away for him. But yeah, it was weirdly comfortable at times because we knew how to do this. There was reassurance there, and we knew so much of the team. You know, everyone was just like so technically able and talented that it meant that so much of that weight was taken off of our backs, I think. But you know, yeah, it was still going to be a bit of a challenge, but I was excited for it. Definitely excited for it.
Joe, I want to talk to you about the casting of Adolescence, because it's phenomenal and it overcomes many of the kind of challenges that I imagine the script presented, chief among which is, how are we ever going to find an actor who's young enough to play Jamie but also has the necessary experience and talent that to pull off something like Owen Cooper does pull off, especially in episode 3, which is just mind-blowing. Tell us about how you did that.
Well, the first thing we did was got ourselves an absolutely supreme casting director. Shaheen Beg is the dame, as it goes, for that sort of, absolutely the dame. And she has a process where she literally goes out to search for people. She was traveling up to the area that we'd chosen to shoot in that Wakefield, in the Yorkshire area, and she was going out and handing out leaflets in shopping malls and supermarkets and stuff. She's just literally going out there and trying to get in people, because we knew that we weren't necessarily looking for a polished person. We were looking for that rawness that you can't actually teach. It's got to be there. So we knew that that's what we were looking for. And she was going to local drama clubs, small drama units that are all over the north of the country, to try and find that person. It was a big undertaking. Phil and I watched a lot of tapes, but Shaheen and her team probably watched 3 times as many as we did for us to come down to the wonderful Owen that we ended up with. And then that process was a lot of meetings. I think we probably met the shortlisted boys that, at each round it got reduced. But there was probably 5 or 6 meetings in that to get to that point, which culminated in chemistry reads with Stephen. So the process was long and detailed, but so worthwhile. And for us to get where we ended up, that is not something that can be rushed. It has to be done with real care to find that person. And we're very, very proud of how we carried ourselves and created that process and work to it. And I'm afraid I'm obsessed with processes. So in making sure that everything works at every level. And what we ended up with Owen, and we ended up with 4 other youngsters who all read for Owen, but who all ended up in the piece. So it was a supreme way to end it.
Yeah, I think that's a really kind of insightful detail about the way your production works as a whole. The fact that the 5 shortlisted actors all ended up with a part in Adolescence. Why was that something that you wanted to do, or that felt important to do?
Well, to be honest, when you work with those youngsters for such a long time, and we did, the amount of auditions and meetings that they had to have to get down to the last 5, it seemed slightly unfair and, to be honest, bonkers to then go, we need 4 people to play these parts. Let's cast somebody else. I mean, these kids had earned a part in Adolescence, absolutely. And it's quite unusual, because usually when you cast like that and you go through that process, you choose one person, and then the others, you thank them very, very much for all their hard work, but nothing comes of it. So it was fantastic to be able to do that. And those youngsters, all of the youngsters, I worked very closely with those youngsters and their parents, offset, looking after everybody's welfare and everything else. And what we created was a fabulous little family of 13 youngsters who all keep in touch with each other. And of course, we found Owen.
I also love Faye Marcy. I especially love Faye Marcy when she's playing a cop. I need to see more of that. I think she's fantastic. And it's total genius as well to cast Ashley Waters kind of against type as the detective. He's fantastic in it as well. I want to know who would like to take credit for those genius decisions among you.
I think it was a collaborative thing. The whole process was collaborative. Obviously Joe, myself, and the other producers all sat around a table, and whenever you do a process like this and you're looking at casting, known actors, there's always the list, you know what I mean, and the wish list and all of those things and stuff like that. But with Ashley, it was quite apparent early on that we wanted, like Stephen had said, Stephen and Hannah had said they just worked with Ashley as well, and Joe had also just worked with Ashley. And we always like to think outside the box whenever it comes to casting. I certainly do anyway, and we're all of the same mindset there, I think. And Ashley, we knew that Ashley had never played this role before, and it would be a challenge for him. And so we wanted to, we asked him if he'd be up for the challenge, and immediately he said yes, he would. So it was a no-brainer for all of us, you know what I mean? And that was exciting, and that was what this whole process was exciting. With Faye, Faye was, I cast Faye in my very, very short film that Matt and I did together.
Your very first short film.
Very first.
It was a short film, but not that short. You said your very, very short film.
My very, very first.
Sorry,
very, very.
Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
First short film called Seconds Out, which a good friend of mine, Robbie O'Neill, had written and also played the lead in. Faye played a therapist in that, and I just thought she was amazing. Not only amazing actress, but like just a wonderful human being. And I always said I really want to work with her again, and we've stayed in touch, and so I put it to the team. I'd love, she was on the list, and I was like, that's who I want to play that role. And everyone agreed. And so I just rang Faye and I said, look, we've got this thing. It's a bit different. It's a little bit, it's a challenge, would you be up for it? And I explained what the show was. And she immediately was like, I don't care what the role is. I'm in, if you'll have me, type thing. And so that was kind of an easy one. And she exceeded all expectations. She's just phenomenal. She's just so
such a great quality to her voice and face. And
I
think Seconds Out is still on Vimeo, right?
I think maybe, yeah. No, it's definitely on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. So I recommend people go and check that one out.
Yeah.
So Jack, one of the reasons Adolescence has hit such a nerve and had such a phenomenal response is that it really is kind of tapping into a lot of like very fraught parental concerns, societal concerns, media cycles that are going on at the moment. I know that you came on at a slightly later stage from the initial development of the idea, but in terms of research, were you pulling on any news stories in particular, any kind of real life cases, any case studies?
Lots, read lots, but didn't take it, took inspiration from it, but didn't copy it. And I think that's really important to say, because there are people that think that we took it from places that we didn't. That thing of going, okay, how do we make Jamie? How do we make Jamie a compelling and real character? And we set out to tell her why done it, not a who done it. We didn't want it to be a sort of like did he, didn't he, because we felt like we'd seen that 1,000 times before. So at the end of Act 1, we establish Jamie did the crime. So the question is, why did he do the crime? And that's where our lens, our breath, our opportunity with this one-shot format to look inside an institution or look inside a place or a person really did its beautiful work. And part of the reason why Jamie did this, and there's about 60 people who could have changed the course of Jamie's life. There are about possibly 600 people, possibly 6,000 people, but I think within our show there's a number of key people who could have stopped him, and could have stopped this crime taking place. And the parents are it. The school is responsible. There's friends that are responsible, and then there's the question of the internet, and that came when I was really struggling because something wasn't feeling right. And someone I work with, Marilla Johnson, said, I think you should look at incel culture. Now, Jamie isn't an incel, and he is a consumer of the manosphere, but he wouldn't describe himself as an incel. Other people accuse him of being an incel, but he did take ideas and the ideology of it. And the reason why I think people are scared is because it's scary. It's really terrifying. It's this stuff is really terrifying, and it is. I've spoken to a lot of school kids, both during the process of writing the show and subsequent to the show. We do have a problem with our teenage boys right now, and the teenage boys are being over. There are a considerable proportion of them are being overly influenced by ideas from online, not necessarily to do harm to women, but in terms of how they're supposed to look, how they're supposed to behave. And there is a gender divide that's growing, and the internet is feeding that divide, and it scares me.
Yeah, there's I think one of the aspects of the brilliance of Adolescence that even amidst the near universal praise still isn't being talked about enough, so I want to talk about, is this thing of like, even as it's not just that it's illustrating this issue of our attention being divided and dissipated, and our young people's attention being divided and dissipated by social media and by online culture and taken away and out of our control. But it's also kind of striking a blow against that by being so incredibly absorbing. This is not a TV show that you can, because of the way you guys have made it, it's not a TV show that you can second screen while you're watching it, or that you would want to. As soon as you're in, and you're there for at least the length of the episode, if not all four. So I guess let me put this question to you, Joe. Do you think that's just something that good television does? Or is there something more intentional? Was there something more intentional going on with Adolescence in terms of our attention?
I think the thing is the importantly, the story is what was the main focus. It wasn't an attempt to do a show which you go, right, we're shooting it and one, aren't we clever? The important thing is the story that is being told. It's the story that's pulling you in. It's the story that you can't you can't ignore, and you can't look away because of the way that it was shot. So once a person sits down and says, right, I'm going to watch Adolescence, literally everyone that I've spoken to, I'm talking about not the people in the industry, but just sort of like regular mates of mine, they've said to me, I could not look away.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is And that to me is praise indeed, because that's the achievement. We're not saying we're really, really clever because we look at the wonderful way we've shot it. We're telling you, we are telling you an important, a crucial story that is of today, that makes you sit on the sofa, makes you stare, and makes you go, right, okay, I've watched episode 1, I need to watch episode 2 and 3 and 4 on the same night, because you couldn't look away. And that to me is crucial storytelling, really important storytelling. And that was the aim, to tell an important story.
But that is why one shot was necessary for this, isn't it? Because that it does do that, right? Would you agree, Philip? That's the kind of the essence of why the one shots works so well with this subject matter.
Oh yeah, 100%. What you just said earlier about like not second screening it and being able to, look away is so important. And I think the one shot does that. It forces a specific perspective on an audience and makes them not look away. There's no breath, there's no cuts, there's no time jumps or any of that. You know what I mean? There's no way, there's no breathing. It's important to, it's very, very thought out between, myself and Matt and the whole team, really. It's a very collaborative thing, but at the forefront of that is, we never just go, oh, let's just do this move because it's cool. It's got to really serve the story. And that's why Matt is so incredibly, like, he's such an emotive DP. And I say this to him, to his face as well. You know what I mean? He's someone, and it actually happened. We were just working together on a project at the minute, and it actually happened a couple of days ago where sorry, no, I'm not going to embarrass you, because I'm so like I'm in awe of the guy, because I've never met anyone who's, he's not just about like being clever, like what Joe said. It's like, it's about it, first and foremost, it serves a story. But when he's there up close with an actor, he's instinctively breathing with them and really sort of he's so in it and invested in it. It's like, it's almost like I don't know whether it's an instinctive thing, right? And not everybody has that. It's an empathetic thing. And I've never met anyone who is so empathetic when it comes to pointing a camera at something than it's happened a couple of times where, like, and one of the first feature that we did together, Villain, I'm gonna tell this story.
You can do it. It's okay.
Can I?
Yeah. You have to. It has to be done.
But that was the spark of it for me, because what happened was, there's a scene in Villain where Azuka Hoyle's character has just seen her dad be killed, and and she has to run down this street. And the idea was that Matt was running down the street with her with the camera, and she has to stop and see her dad, and then she burst out into tears and she falls to the ground and all this stuff. So we did it, and then Azuka gave the most amazing performance. And I was like, and then I was like, said to Azuka, "Oh my God, well done, that was amazing." Gave her a hug. I was like, "Where's Matt?" And then I looked over to the corner. He was just sat on the curb, and he was just like, had sort of like his head in his hands. And I was like, "What's going on?" And he got really upset, because I think he said to me, he was like, "I just felt really helpless. I couldn't help her and I was like, "What?" You know what I mean? And it's something similar happened a couple of days ago on Enola. It was a scene where he just felt it. He just feels it. That's not like, it's, yeah. So yeah, I can't remember what the question was now, but I've just gone and
no, but you answered it. That is, that thing like that, your heart beating in time with the performers.
Absolutely,
it is a lot about timing and empathy, and those two things coming together in this sort of.
But also being open to change as well. And like, if an actor does something different, he's not going to go, oh no, that wasn't what we practiced. He's with him. He's gone. He's in it. You know what I mean? It's and Lee as well. The other camera operator is the same. They're like the same.
Yeah.
The one time when I think we hurt Matt, and you'd have thought it would be in 1, 2, or 4 where he was having to sprint through things or do mad shit, was episode 3 where we really damaged his back because he was
knee.
so in it that he
Oh, yeah,
just
no.
knees because he was just so in it that he just ended up hurting himself. So yeah.
That one was this because if there was any sharp movements in that episode, especially anything that was translated from the operator through the camera into the image, you would have really noticed it. Like any pan that was a tiny bit too sharp, any of my footsteps
Which
that were
episode are you
bobbing a
talking
bit.
about
Episode
now?
3 in
Three.
the Darren and Owen, like that one, I had to be so delicate all the time. I was doing this like sideways crab around the table, like trying to keep myself smooth, for what was it, like 55 minutes? I can't remember, like a long time, and you essentially end up doing like 10 of those where they're potential episodes plus all the rehearsals. So it's like 10 hours of crabbing sideways.
What Jack Thorne is so brilliant at is being so brutal and so human. That's the crux of this episode, and probably the whole series, is how interesting it is what people present versus what's within.
Adolescence is not a whodunit, it's a whydunit. How did this boy end up in this place? And looking more widely at that question of male rage.
We get to really see inside of this young boy's head now. Is it nature? Is it nature? What is it? What has led him to commit this horrific act?
Hi, Jamie.
Go.
It was nerve-wracking reading episode 3 and then realising, we need to cast a 13-year-old lad who can really go on a journey emotionally.
Who looks extremely innocent and looks like a vulnerable, afraid young boy.
We haven't finished.
Because of schedule needs, we had to start with episode 3, which I was very nervous about because that's an hour-long script for a young actor to learn, acting opposite Erin Doherty.
Do it quick, what was that?
That rehearsal week, you're constantly asking yourself, can he get there?
As soon as you lose that eye contact, all the power's gone. You'll be giving him notes and he's just looking at you like that look. He's giving you that look and I'm like, is he listening to me?
Look out! Fucking want to sit down! You do not tell me when to sit down! Get that in that fucking little head of yours!
And then he'll go and do a take. Every single note will be nailed.
It was a combination of 2 voices in the room for him. It was Phil, who's so gentle, and it was Erin.
I need you to sit down.
Just so well written that it kind of requires you to just be there. We're just surrendering to the script and each other.
Something happened between the 2 of them, and it just took Owen into another place and took Jamie into another place. And actually, it was the best start we could have made for him.
That night, I didn't touch her. I could have touched her, but I didn't. I had a knife. She was scared, but I didn't do that. I could have touched any part of her body I wanted to. I really wanted to, but I didn't. Most boys would have touched her.
What's so heartbreaking for Bryony at the end, you witness her have to let go of everything she's wanted this boy to be.
What did you think about me then?
And all these thoughts kind of come into her mind, and it's kind of symbolised through this sandwich. The person that she was when she entered the room, who was making the offer, to then the person who won't even touch it. It's just such a great thing to play.
Coming out. Oh no.
I mean, we were already talking about the one shot of it all because it is so fascinating, and not just for sort of film nerds like me who have been salivating over it, but also I think ordinary people who probably don't even know the term one shot it's impacted them because of how immersive that we've been talking about the show is. Am I right in thinking that the key to a great one shot is just rehearse, Matthew?
Yeah, that and motivation, like the reason why for all of it, like rehearsals, the joy of, we're able to make something really, really good because we had 2 weeks of rehearsing what is one massive scene, and obviously it's a really complicated scene, but on a conventional shoot, you get to rehearse a scene for 15, 20 minutes, and or a bit more if you're lucky, and then you have to shoot it, and you're committed to it then. But we were able to do the episode and then sit there, watch it through, take loads of notes, and refine it to an extent that you don't get to do on when you're shooting an entire episode of telly. You can't be like, okay, we've cut it all together now, let's take loads of notes and go shoot it again. Like there's some luxury that's afforded in the process of it, that is abnormal. So yeah, that part of it is really yeah, that's quite essential to it. But also, wait, what was the question at the start? Sorry, I've started trailing off the my own thing.
It's about whether rehearsal is the kind of key to pulling it off.
So then like rehearsals is it's really essential, but what's more important is, as I was saying there, like the motivation of kind of the reason why the camera's moving, and the guys alluded to it as well. Like it's like first off, it's story. Second importance is the camera, in terms of it needs to take a back seat slightly, and it needs to feed off of the characters and the storyline, and then the performances as well, and be a mirror to it, as opposed to like trying to necessarily do too much of applying energy to the scene. It needs to feed off of that energy in the scene. So a lot of prep was working out what that energy was going to be in each moment, because essentially each camera position is an edit. Like if I come into a close-up, that's the close-up you would have chosen in the edit. And how do I get to a wide without feeling like it's the end of the episode if I just start walking backwards? Like there's all these problems to solve. The 2 weeks of rehearsals that we get is where everything kind of changes. So you have to just be flexible in that time, but also those changes exist, as well as also like positive kind of discoveries, almost like little sort of like, oh, that little moment there that we couldn't have imagined in prep, we can now find with the camera, and maybe want to focus on a bit more. But a lot of the sort of the design of it happens in that prep period, because you need so much time to work out kind of how you can connect all the dots in a way that's going to potentially be really seamless and not distracting for an audience, and just feel correct, and feel. Someone the other day said it felt inevitable, like the camera moves felt inevitable. And I was like, I'm going to use that, and I am now. Like the inevitability of it is something that comes from like thinking about each of these scenes for months, really, and then hoping in those 2 weeks that what you've been discussing works, and then when it doesn't, working out why, and then changing it a little bit, so that the camera just is looking at the thing that you should be looking at, like at each moment all the way through it. So you never think, oh, I wish I was still looking at that person, because that's when you think, oh, it's a oneer, and that's when you're thinking about the technicality and not the story. So like it's just trying to connect the dots in the least abrasive way possible, and the slickest way, emotionally, narratively, and then technically. There you go.
That thing about inevitability is really good. That makes me think of, I was talking to someone about The Shining the other day, and the way the camera kind of draws you into the center of the hotel, that room, and you feel like it's going somewhere bad, but you can't stop going.
Yeah.
But Joe, I think producing any TV show or film is an incredible or inspiring feat of logistics. But I imagine this one required some things of you that other TV shows don't. How, like in terms of the one shot, was it different? Was it more demanding as a producer?
Yes, definitely. Sort of like looking at when I first read the script and saw in episode 1, we go to a house, drag a kid out, bring him into a van, drive to somewhere else, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That sounds really good. And I went to the meeting, but when I went to the meeting for the show, I had no idea it was a one-shot project. And it wasn't until halfway through the meeting that it was to me that it was going to be shot on one shot. And in my mind, I just thought suddenly I had that, oh, for goodness sake, feeling. And then I had to gather it up and then talk really positively about how the one shot would be done.
Go on, team.
Because I had not prepped that area of it, because I didn't know that's what was going to happen. And in truth, I'm an ex-director, so I was really excited by this. really excited. You know, I saw the names on the front of the script, and I'm thinking, Jack, Phil, Stephen, one shot. Oh my days, this has got to be me. I have got to be doing this. And so when, you know, once I got there, I got over the shock of not knowing that that's what I was going to be doing. And it was all about process for me. It was all about organization. It was all about thinking ahead, thinking about the problems that could come up and trying to solve them before they became problems. It's the kind of way that I work anyway on any project, but with this, it was absolutely crucial that I had to head things off at the pass way early. So it meant that I needed to make sure that locations were nailed as soon as possible. I had to make sure that you know, the things that we needed to make it work, the studio and the bills and everything were all kept on time, so that when we came to the rehearsal weeks, we had everything. Because, you know, sometimes when we shoot in a conventional way, you can go into a shoot and two or three locations are not available to you and you've never seen them. Well, obviously this is not going to work on this show. So timing and making sure that everything was in place when it needed to be was absolutely crucial. And that was my main job, really, to be across absolutely everything. There was no way that anything could be late because it would be detrimental. So yeah, yeah, it was challenging, but a really great challenge.
Yeah, I think it must have been hugely useful to the show to have a producer who had so much directing experience. It also struck me as probably not coincidental that there are so many long-term working relationships and friendships kind of undergirding this production. So, like, I know, Jack, you and Stephen Graham have known each other for a long time. Philip, you and Stephen go way back to Band of Brothers days. Obviously, Matthew and Philip have been working together for a long time. I mean, are you all just communicating telepathically by this point?
Yeah, we don't speak to each other. We just look at each other.
But do you think? But like, do you think that would it be possible to pull something of this scale off, of this ambition off, without those kinds of relationships, long-term relationships, which I imagine do have an element of just mutual understanding by this point?
I mean, I think it's so important, you know, on any job really, that you have that that communication and that history together, because you know, it's you have a shorthand with each other. You understand how each other works, and you know, it's I think with something like this as well, you know, certain people would think you're absolutely mad to try to attempt this, and so those people would, you know, any sort of negative, not negative, but any sort of doubt, we would immediately be like, well, you know, we all need to be on the same page, and we all need to be, you know, enjoying what we're doing, because it's an incredible challenge, but we also have to have fun while we're doing it. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's so important to have those relationships, because you can, and it's a family. We are a family, you know what I mean? And families, we have disagreements, and we, you know, and things like that, but it's all part of the process. And I think we are so sort of close with each other that we can have those disagreements, and it's not a problem, or we sort of, people can have opinions, and it's never frowned upon, or it's never, you know, questioned. It's a collaboration, and it needed to be that. You know, it was when we first started prep early last year, we got into production part, which was the studio that we shot in, and I think it was just me, Matt, and Joe, and maybe a couple of other people in the office, and we just like bounced it around this massive space, just the three of us. And Joe would have these meetings every week, which was just so helpful, like these production meetings, and we all sit down, and in the first one it was just like maybe three of us or four of us, maybe, of, you know, and then by the end of it, there's 60 people in the room, and you know, all squashing in, and you can't get in, and it was just like, you know, and everyone was able to voice their opinions. And so yeah, it is an amazing thing to have, to be able to do this with your work family. You know,
There was an enormous sense of calm during the whole process, which you wouldn't have expected. And is a tribute to Phil, really. It's a tribute to Phil, it's a tribute to Sarah, our first AD, who's amazing, and it's a tribute to Joe. And just there was this sort of like, we're all doing this, it's going to be okay. And whatever was going wrong, I mean, because of me, there were 300 school kids running around on this set for 2 weeks, you know, because I put a stupid fire drill in the middle of episode 2. And yet everyone was just kind of like really, really like, yeah, this is fine. This is fine. And I'm a nervous Nelly. I was all over the place. I was a nightmare. But these guys were just like, yeah, no, it's all right. It's all right. Jo was living in a yoga retreat because we were killing her every day. But do you know what I mean? You know, but other than that, there was an enormous sense of calm.
So it's all one take. No, sorry, it's all one shot, but multiple takes, right? Was it immediately obvious to you which take you would use, or was that a subject of much discussion and debate?
Yeah, much discussion, much debate. I think you get a sense of, and the actors are doing something slightly different every time, you know, minor things, and the camera, you know, so it's like, but at the end of a take, you'd either be like, I mean, obviously the first take, you're like, great, that was great. We've got 9 more to go. Let's see where we get to, you know what I mean? But by like take 4 or take 5, you sort of go, okay, that's in the bank. And you may, by the end of the week, we might have had like 3 in the bank, if I'm correct, or something like that, depending on, you know, maybe 2, maybe. So
meaning 3 where everything's pretty much gone perfectly, and then it's just down to nuance.
Yeah, exactly. And so we banked them, and then by the end of the week, then we'd have like maybe 2 or 3 to choose from, and we'd all go away and watch it, and then we'd decide which one that we'd send to Netflix, or 2. We'd send 2 to Netflix, but with our favorites one, and it was I mean, sometimes you know immediately that it's not going to be the take because of tiny things. But you know, the good thing is we had, and 10 takes doesn't seem like a lot, but we only had, on Boiling Point, we had what, 2 takes, 3. Well, we had 4, but
4 in total. Yeah,
but the first 2 were they were like rehearsals. Yeah. So we were like, 10 takes, brilliant. This is a dream for us, you know.
And did you have a say on which takes were, Jack, I'm talking to now, did you have a say on which takes, and were you like always preferring the one that was closer to the script that you'd written?
They were all pretty close to the script, because the way that it had to work is that because it was all about that little the detail, and the detail was in tiny little bits of dialogue every now. Yes, I was part of the discussion. I didn't always agree, and I still don't agree, but that's the beautiful thing about a family. You have arguments, don't you? Like, you know, and I'm very happy with what we ended up choosing. But yeah, no, there's one episode that I would have chosen differently on, but I was outvoted.
Are you going to be releasing a pirate Jack Thorne's?
Yeah, no, it's coming out. It's coming out on my new channel, Netflix.
Jack Flicks.
Very good. So, you know, on a show that deals with so many tough issues and has so many children in the cast, thanks to Jack Thorne's fire alarm scene, I imagine the kind of welfare considerations would have been pretty high. What kinds of things did you do to make sure that everyone was okay and that this positive, healthy atmosphere on set was maintained, Jo?
Yeah, we had a child psychologist that was with us for the entire time of the shoot, and she was there to support all of our youngsters. Many of them were new to the industry and hadn't done a lot of TV work, and so it was important that they were looked after properly. She was also involved in, you know, the run up to people being cast. So I spoke to her a lot about how to approach sending out scripts, for argument's sake, with the content that it involved, and just basically trying to think about how that information will be received by someone that you're not actually going to talk to. We did a lot of work beforehand in that regard, and she did a tremendous amount of work with the children, the youngsters in the show, right the way through. Their welfare was very, very important to us. And you know, the key for me is that I received these youngsters into the show and wanted to send them back to their homes, you know, the same way I got them, basically. And so it was very, very important to make sure that they were well looked after. And you know, as Jack has alluded to, and Phil, the keeping that positive atmosphere on set at all times was really important. You know, you bring these youngsters into an atmosphere, you got to make sure it's the right one. You got to make sure it's the right one. And you know, I know it's talked about youngsters all the time, but we also had a process for the adults in the cast. If there was somebody that wanted to speak to somebody privately, we had a facility there so that the adults could do that as well. We tried very hard to think about the whole picture of what was needed to make a show that had a very difficult subject matter, and make sure that people were looked after.
And they're still being looked after now. I think Rachel is still on board, who's our child psychologist, you know, at the end of the phone for any of the youngsters, and the same for the adults as well, because you know, you make a show like this, and when you're making it, you want to look after people, but also when it comes out, the implications of, like, you know, for example, Owen now is, you know, his face is everywhere, and that's not an easy thing, and I'm in constant contact with Owen, and his family, and we all are, you know, and not just Owen, but all the kids as well, and how that's impacted their lives and how it's changed, because this show has changed everybody's lives who worked on it. Let's be honest, it's had an impact that I don't think any of us expected.
Yeah, let's talk about that a bit more, the response to the show, because it has been huge, like really international. Like, I think everybody who is in any way connected to TV, British TV, is talking about it, and it's impacted them, and we think, and you know what it means for British TV industry and the international TV as a whole. But for you guys, what aspect of the response, or which responses, have surprised you?
From my point of view, going to number 10.
Oh yeah, you went to number 10.
Visiting the Prime Minister on Downing Street. Yeah, so that was you and Jack, right?
Jack went to number 10 to have a chat with the Prime Minister. It's just crazy stuff. It's just, I mean, for me personally, the impact on the show, because I'm behind the scenes, and I'm sort of like the quiet voice. I'm like the person who's stoking the train. Most people want to talk to the train driver. They're not interested in the coal stoker. So it's been nuts on my email, but obviously no one knows who I am, so it's absolutely fine until I went to number 10. And then I was having walked down that famous pavement and out the other side, my phone was going with people sending me pictures of me sitting next to Jack at number 10, and they're going, "What are you doing?" And this is the first time for me, because obviously I'd come from out of the shadows. The first time for me where that old personal impact, it was like a bit of a shock to find myself in The Guardian. That was a big shock. But the show itself, in regards to the impact it has had for me, phenomenal amount of people will take my calls now. That is quite funny.
And that's before all the awards that you're going to get as well. So that's good. Pretty good.
I'll be back in the shadows by then.
Never, Joe. Never.
And Jack, have you taken a TV show to number 10 before, or was that a first?
I've never taken a TV show to number 10. I'm trying to work out what all our jobs are on this train. So Phil's the driver, Matt's the conductor. I'm food trolley, maybe.
You're the engineer that built the train.
Oh, right. Okay, exactly. Right. Okay, that means I can sit at home and just The best bit of the reaction has been mates that aren't involved in the TV industry saying that they've had conversations with their teenagers that they've never had before. And because I'm at the age where a lot of my friends have got teenagers, that's been absolutely phenomenal. And them saying, yeah, no, he really opened up, she really opened up, we had chats that we never had before. And I've had the opportunity to go into a few schools and talking to the kids there, and and there's been all this shit about why is it being shown in schools, this isn't going to solve any problems showing it in schools. And the whole point is, no, we want to trigger a conversation in schools between the people in the schools, and that those conversations happening subsequent to the show, that's been the really exciting thing, where you're hearing stories about teenage girls that never say anything in class because there's a group of boys that fucking terrify them. You know what I mean? Like, and it's that stuff where you just go, okay, there's something to be said here, and that by creating that space for that conversation, and the best bit about number 10 was we shut up mainly, and it was specialists that were talking to the Prime Minister and saying, okay, this is what you need to look at, this is what you need to do. And that process of shutting up and letting that conversation happen, that's been the best bit. That's been the best reaction to the show.
Yeah, it does take a TV show sometimes to make the conversations happen, really.
Well, it's a trigger point, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And we're not saying we're the answer to anything. We framed a question, and hopefully then other people can work out the answer. We just needed to frame the question as well as we possibly could.
Matthew, any interesting responses to the show? Or
I think generally I wasn't sure how the format would land in terms of like, I was worried, like when we were obviously prepping this, that if I guess I and my team didn't do our job well enough, that it would be sidebarred as a gimmick, because it at times one shots maybe aren't the right choice for stuff, and so it was making sure and proving that it is the right choice in order for it to and also to camouflage amongst the story. So I didn't know when it came out if people were going to be like yawning at the fact that there's no different, kind of a break for them. It might be too much almost. It might, not seeing a bunch of different locations and different times of days and being in space and stuff. Like if how that lands to the audience, I just really wasn't sure. And the fact it's landed so incredibly well and accidentally been almost a bit of an antidote to the sort of lack of focus and the sort of second screening that it talks about, that's been the biggest surprise for me. Well, not surprise, I think I sort of knew we were making something cool, but I didn't know for sure. And I was worried for definitely to start with that there was a chance that if we didn't do it well enough, it wouldn't work basically and be interesting in the way that we imagined it to be. So I'm obviously very glad that it has.
I imagine this being like your entree into the big boys DOP club, like Roger Deakins is going to be smoking cigars with you soon. And
I don't know. I mean, I've had some emails and some calls recently that are quite exciting. Just stuff that obviously like a year ago, 6 months ago, I couldn't. 2 months ago, I couldn't have imagined having. So yeah, it's been life changing. It has. There's no way around it. It really has.
Well, very well deserved. Very well deserved.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Philip, what's blown your mind the most?
I mean, to mirror what everyone said, really, it's like we went into this show wanting to make something a bit different and to certainly to spark a conversation, and that has absolutely blown my mind in terms of the response that we've had to that. When we were making the show, it was like, it felt like we were making something a bit different and a bit special, and the reaction from the crew, and everyone who was watching it play out live, was the reaction that we were wanting to get. But then, with Boiling Point, for example, that came out to a limited release, and it was during, just after COVID, all of COVID and stuff, and the one shot thing reached only a certain amount of people, and certain type of people will watch that film because it's an indie film and it's, it's not got huge explosions and all this kind of stuff. So a certain type of person watched that movie. But again, the power of Netflix, which I had never experienced before personally. You know, I've seen, you know, you see things like, you know, Baby Reindeer and all those shows that they come out and then they just blow up, and it's a huge thing, and that's the power of Netflix. I never experienced that, and I didn't think this show would. For some reason, because we made it in Yorkshire and it was it's a small town, and it's a very you know, it's a story about, which is, yeah, it's set in a small town in England. I never thought in a million years that it would be the #1 show in India or Venezuela, or, you know what I mean? And I'm getting messages inundated on Instagram from people from all over the world who can relate to this story, or have really been affected by it, or, you know, and that for me has blown my mind a little bit, I think. And you know, the message that I've been getting from, like, I had a text message from Steven Spielberg, who's watched it twice. You know, wow. Matt and I got letters from Adele last week, handwritten letters from Adele.
You
basically
made it,
saying,
Adele.
I mean, you know, just like saying that she'd watched it with her 13-year-old son, and it's changed their relationship. And then for things like that is just beyond anything I ever imagined from this little show that we made with our family.
Have you guys noticed any kind of difference in the way men and women receive the show or watching the show? Just speaking from my personal experience, like watching that last episode, I mean, it floored me. But then I turned around and looked at my husband, and he was like in buckets of tears, like on a different level. And I just wondered if that had been your experience as well. Is there anything gendered about it, you thought? Because obviously it is a lot about men and women and gender.
I mean, for me personally, the reaction has been the same, you know, and I think I mean, I've not really, I've seen a couple of videos of people reacting to the show, and you know, and there's one that I saw, which was a father and son watching it, and it wasn't they both had a visceral reaction to it, but it was just, I don't know, it's a beautiful thing to watch, to be honest with you.
I guess it's the exploration of fatherhood, and Graham does such an incredible performance in that scene. And
but Christine Tremarco as well, like, she is just like, with that moment when she stood at the stairs, and, you know, one of the notes that I gave her was just, you know, that's your moment when you're at the stairs, that's your moment of silence when you're on your own. You know, Lisa's gone, Eddie's upstairs. That's a little release that you can have there. And what she did with that note is what you see in that episode. And it's just, every time I watch it, it just breaks me, you know? So it's, yeah, it's really sort of, I think it's just relatable. Like that's the whole thing about the show. It's completely relatable to anyone, not even people who've got kids, but just, you know, human beings, real human story, you know? Sorry, were you going to say something, Matt?
I was going to say, I wonder if for some men watching this, it shines a light onto a little part of the male sort of, I don't want to just call it rage, because it's not just that, but this where they sit in society now, and understanding the role of a man in 2025 it's a whole thing, and it's something that probably isn't being discussed as much, and I think it points out certain things in male personality that probably hits a little harder maybe for some people that have been suppressing or ignoring those inner thoughts and demons and stuff like that. So I think there's, you know, and also just see people seeing that in their friends, even if it's not them, or people, you know, it taps into just something there that is, you know, is honest and is really vulnerable, that men aren't generally good at doing.
I think that's it. You nailed it. It's that discussion of masculinity that's only happening online, and not in the ways, the intelligent, kind of sensitive, rounded way that Adolescence has been opening up that conversation.
But some of the stories about masculinity are as old as time. You know, the fact that I'd say one of the most important scenes in the whole show is that first scene with Eddie and Jamie in the jail cell when Eddie doesn't hug him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, where and male touch is such an important part. You know, I haven't hugged my dad in 20 years. You know, like, you know, just that thing of just kind of like, we're not programmed to touch. and I think that's
and you're about the age of Jamie when you stop hugging your dad, really. Like
yes,
sort of
you
age,
are,
and,
you
yeah.
are, you are, you are,
Mm.
you are.
So is this the kind of end of the story for Adolescence? Like, is there going to be? Could you imagine like some kind of Adolescence 2 with maybe a different story, different cast? Or will you guys work together again in a different capacity? Are there any plans to do that?
Well, we are working together. Phil and Phil and Matt are currently shooting Enola 3, which I've written. So we are working together in that respect.
Gang,
I think the Miller's story's being told. Whether we work out something else to do with the one-shot format, there might be something, but we haven't worked it out yet. We certainly haven't got a story that's brewing right now. We're talking because we'd love to do it again in some form. But I think the thing of Adolescence is it was the story of Jamie Miller, and we feel like we've told Jamie Miller's story as well as we possibly can, and that any attempt to go back to it would feel exploitative rather than learning anything new.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a very good place to end on then. Then it's all we've got time for as well. Thank you so much. And congratulations again on Adolescence. What an incredible thing to have been a part of. And we're really grateful to have seen it. And it's still on Netflix to anyone who somehow hasn't seen it yet. Thanks to everybody watching. Goodbye.